What you're going to hear today is a story of incredible grit, of just the absolute incredible misleading things the media does.
Yeah.
How government officials scramble for cover and will hang people out to dry.
Yep.
The story of a booming success that ends in tragedy.
Wow.
But let me go right back to the beginning. The first day I met Peter Boatman, I think it was in Dusseldorf, Germany.
Yep.
We were just launching the M26. And this guy named Peter Boatman, who was a UK police officer, came. And he said, I came here because they would never even allow these in the UK. And they certainly would never allow me to be hit with one. But I've heard about these and I want to take a hit. And I remember talking to him that day. And he shared with me, I said, why are you so excited about this? And he said, well, do you know what they do when they have somebody with a knife in Northamptonshire, which is his town?
Yep.
They would call Peter Boatman, and he would come and disarm these guys. And he told me, I think he'd been stabbed like 26
Physically disarm
times.
them.
Physically disarm them.
He was their less lethal weapon, actually. In actual fact, he was the animated
He was a
version.
human.
He was a human less lethal weapon, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently he'd been stabbed virtually every time he would disarm somebody. He described the technique to me.
He'd go very, very close in, yeah.
Let me see if I remember this correct. What he would tell me is, typically people would have a knife up here.
Yeah.
And Peter would charge them.
Get close.
He would put his hands across to catch the knife, and he'd almost invariably get cut. And then as he wrapped them up, he had one move that would knock them out every time.
Yeah. He called it pat, wrap, and attack was what you think. And you're on about him.
Headbutt.
Yeah.
Headbutt.
Yeah.
Peter had a knot in his forehead.
Yeah.
Anyway, he came, he said, look, I'm sick of getting stabbed, and I want to see us bring this to the UK. And so we shot him in Germany. And then I don't know what happened quite from there, but he said, look, I'm just a cop. I've been doing this a long time, but I've got a friend who's a businessman. And I think he was talking about you.
Let's boldly go.
Welcome to episode 21 of the Boldly Go podcast. We are back at it again. And Rick, we are not in the Batcave, that is for sure.
That's right. We are in London with a good friend and the guy who helped make Taser possible in the UK, Kevin Coles.
Well, it's really lovely to come down here and see you again.
Great seeing you, Kevin.
Very nice to meet you too, Mike. It's it's a very nice setup you've got here. Everybody seems to follow you around the world and present us in the best possible light. So I'm hoping they can change the colour of my hair and give me a bit of a tan and colour the beard a little.
We're pretty
do
up
that
a bunch.
do that in the editing suite, so I don't look quite so drained amongst you guys.
My only question is, Rick has AI agents that he uses, and we've talked about on previous podcasts. He loves a British accent, so will you be trying your British accent on this podcast, Rick?
Well, I don't try to do one myself, but I might voice clone Kevin to be my new AI agent.
Please do. I'd love that. I'd absolutely
class it up. Okay, let's get into things. So we are here in the UK, and it's actually a big day.
Yeah.
They just approved Taser 10 in the United Kingdom after, I think, what is this, 2.5 years after launch?
It's fantastic news. Historically, every new device we've been fortunate enough to offer to the UK, it always takes a minimum of 2 years. Doesn't matter how fantastic it is, it always takes 2 years. Don't know why, but at least you'll have tested it and used it successfully elsewhere in the world. We're just a little bit behind you. But
well, I tell you, the UK takes this stuff very seriously in terms of weapon regulation. Actually, my first run-in, I was going through Heathrow Airport on a business trip, and I forget where I was even going to, but I had with me, in my checked luggage, I had a plastic model of the Air Taser 34,000. It was not even a live weapon. And somehow they saw it. And I got pulled aside by the customs police, pulled into a room. They were taking this very seriously. They're like, these weapons are totally illegal here. We ended up crushing it under my foot to show them it was just a plastic model. I learned that in the United Kingdom, they viewed Taser weapons like machine guns or almost like nuclear weapon components. It's, what is it, Title 5?
Section 5, but with the M26, you kindly produced a dummy weapon because they wanted a dummy weapon for handling trials. But it couldn't be made in the same plastic as the standard Taser. So they found a yucky green colour, looked almost radioactive, and you very kindly moulded me up a dummy Taser, and I filled it with mastic to get the weight right. But then, when they came and they saw I'd got my dummy Taser, I had to take it to the proof house in Birmingham to prove that it wasn't a gun and it wasn't a viable weapon. And I had to physically take it to where they take shotguns and pistols and everything. My little plastic gun that looked a bit like an oversized water pistol, I actually had to take it to the proof house. And the guy said, "What have you brought that here for?" I said, "Well, this is what the Home Officer told me to do."
So today, I want to document for history and for posterity the incredible story of Taser in the UK. You and this heroic guy named Peter Boatman, we're going to get to in a moment, against all odds, getting this weapon legalized, and now to where it's been widely used in the UK and now approved, even with the newest Taser 10, which I think could become standard issue for every cop in the UK. And this never would have happened if it weren't for you and Peter.
Well, thank you.
But it's fantastic you've brought that to us. Ironically, when Peter was with us until we unfortunately lost him, he said to me, it'll be 20 years before of course, it's 25 years really, but he did tell me right from the get-go when he went out of his way to get him interested, because we worked well on another little project that they were doing for the police, and he introduced me to the M26. We'd done some training for this other bit of kit, and he said, "Does anybody want to get hit with a taser?" So I said, "Oh, what's a taser?" And he'd been, I think he'd been to Germany and took a hit from. You treated Peter to a hit in Germany, and he was enthusiastic as you would expect. And then he'd got his chief constable to agree for him to get an M26 in. And he asked us if any of us wanted to sample it. He gave me my little zap, and I thought it was fantastic. And I said, "Well, where did you get it from?" And he said, "Well, the chief constable bought it." And he very kindly gave me an email of Taser, or Taser International as was in those days, and sent an email, met you in London, and then the rest is history. Although for a couple of years, we had a bit of a up and a down, getting anything in and getting the authority, because the first 12 months, I had a 12 months Section 5 authority that you were.
Well, hold on. Before we go there, I want to actually wind back the clock, because what you're going to hear today is a story of incredible grit, of just the absolute incredible misleading things the media does.
Yeah.
How government officials scramble for cover and will hang people out to dry.
Yeah.
The story of a booming success that ends in tragedy.
Wow.
But let me go right back to the beginning. The first day I met Peter Boatman, I think it was in Dusseldorf, Germany.
Yep.
We were just launching the M26. And this guy named Peter Boatman, who was a UK police officer, came. And he said, "I came here because they would never even allow these in the UK. And they certainly would never allow me to be hit with one. But I've heard about these and I want to take a hit." And I remember talking to him that day. And he shared with me, I said, "Why are you so excited about this?" And he said, "Well, do you know what they do when they have somebody with a knife in Northamptonshire," which is his town?
Yep.
They would call Peter Boatman, and he would come and disarm these guys. And he told me, I think he'd been stabbed like 26
Physically disarm
times.
them.
Physically disarm them.
He was their less lethal weapon, actually. In actual fact, he was the animated
He was a
version.
human.
He was a human less lethal weapon, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently he'd been stabbed virtually every time he would disarm somebody. He described the technique to me.
He'd go very, very close in, yeah.
Let me see if I remember this correct. What he would tell me is, typically people would have a knife up here.
Yeah.
And Peter would charge them.
Get close.
He would put his hands across to catch the knife, and he'd almost invariably get cut. And then as he wrapped them up, he had one move that would knock them out every time.
Yeah. He called it pat, wrap, and attack, was what you think. And you're on about him.
Headbutt.
Yeah.
Headbutting.
Yeah.
Peter had a knot in his forehead.
Yeah.
Anyway, he came, he said, "Look, I'm sick of getting stabbed, and I want to see us bring this to the UK." And so we shot him in Germany. And then I don't know what happened quite from there, but he said, "Look, I'm just a cop. I've been doing this a long time, but I've got a friend who's a businessman." And I think he was talking about you. How did you and Peter know each other?
Well, I was, you probably didn't know, my history goes right back to, I was shoe repairing and key cutting. I get a family business, worked my brother and my father. Pretty successful at that time, but I always liked doing additional stuff. And my brother was on holiday. Peter came in the shop, didn't know Peter at that time, and he said, I said, no, I'm not him, I'm his brother. He said, and he showed me this device, which was a soft cloth device. It was for limb restraint system, and it was pretty good. But he said he'd seen it in Florida, really liked it, but it was over £100. He said, "We can't afford £100. can you make that for £50? And I looked at it and I thought, ooh, there's a bit of scope there. Yeah, I could make that for £50.
Well, wait a minute. Now, the first time he showed you a taser, did he try to get you to make a taser for cheaper too?
No. He trusted me. After we did that,
how did you know to come into the shoe shop?
He was, well, because he'd met my brother and he used to go in and have a coffee with him. And my brother's a very sociable sort of guy. Peter is a super... was a super sociable guy. He would he'd enthuse the room, wouldn't he, Rick? He really was. He's very enthusiastic. He came in and he wanted to have access to this piece of kit at a price they could afford because he knew it would help them as the situation was then. Because there's people been killed with somebody in handcuffs, even handcuffed to the rear. They'd done some very serious damage, and the idea was a soft cloth wrapped around the limbs, around the legs. The only thing was, eventually it was discovered it was too difficult to train, but more importantly, when I was at Northamptonshire Police Headquarters, he'd put me through all the instructor courses because he said, if you want to sell us this bit of kit, I mean, it was him wanting to sell it, really, but he needed to find a vehicle, which was me. And he said, if you want to sell this bit of kit, you've got to have an understanding where it sits in the conflict resolution model. So I got taught handcuffing, PR-24 baton, tactical communications. I had a face full of Parva spray, all this sort of stuff. And I was up there for several weeks. And then once I'd done that, he allowed me to help him show other people how to use this miraculous bit of kit. And then one week, I was up there and there was I think it was an officer from West Yorkshire Police, a couple of prison officers, various people. And he happened to say, would anybody like to have a taser? And I said, well, yeah, let's have a go at a taser. And I say, and very kind, and even, I mean, I haven't had it been shot with it recently, but every time I just think, what a fantastic bit of kit. Because we could have got to that later, but when you treated me, after seeing Dr. Ho, I was one of the people who had to drink as much alcohol as possible in an hour and then get 15 seconds.
Oh, wow. You were one of those.
Yeah, I was one of those. Yeah, there's only 20 of us. Get a 15-second activation of the X26. And again, and I think you put the microphone in front of my face and I think I got up and I said, oh, that was impressive, Rick, I think were my exact words. And it was. Yeah. It was super impressive. But I was drunk.
How about this for just the wonderful happenstance of life? Peter Boatman shows up to a training in Germany, comes back to his friend who had a shoe cobbler and key cutting business.
He came to see my brother. He didn't come to see me. And I'm only in there for 2 weeks of the year. So 2 weeks out of 52, I was working elsewhere.
Because he was on holiday.
And my brother wouldn't have probably been interested in making it. He wouldn't have saw the opportunity. But I sort of fed off Peter's enthusiasm. And I said, oh, it wasn't quite as easy to get because I had to get a licensing agreement with the American inventor. And it was a bit of a painful journey. They use it in secure health hospitals, and some police forces used it around the country, but it was just too difficult to train.
Yeah. And so this is the M26. This is the first.
Well, first he was talking about this wrap device,
right,
and then Peter Brigham. Yes, it was the M26.
That's the first. But I mean, this is the device, as you described, that saved the company.
Yes, this was when we were on the verge of collapse.
Yeah,
and that was scaling in the U.S. and we brought it to the EU. Now, at that point, I did not hold up any hope in the UK. Amnesty International is headquartered in the UK. And for years, they have characterized taser, electrical weapons, stun guns as torture devices. And they're completely illegal in the UK. In fact, to this day, it is completely illegal for me to be in the UK having a phone call related to a sale with another international customer because I would be within the jurisdiction of the UK facilitating trafficking in international electrical weapons, which at least historically considered torture weapons. I think and that's what these guys were up against.
It's still classified as such. And the reverse was true for me when I was a distributor. I couldn't take a sales call when I was in America. Mm-hmm. I don't know. How do they look at emails nowadays and stuff like that?
I don't know, but I assume they can. MI6 is pretty good.
Yeah, no, but I mean, how would they consider them? Because there are times when you particularly would need to have to respond and stuff like that. And it is it's a ridiculous.
I think our team is very good, though. They are.
Oh
very
yeah,
good
they
at
would. But I mean,
making sure.
but how in this day and age to have something that's being used by so many successfully by so many police officers to say it's still on the prohibited.
Does that trace back to Amnesty International? That is.
It was, yeah. They put it on a restricted and prohibited list. You get a Section 5 authority that allows you to sell prohibited weapons and stuff. You know, if you've got a pump action shotgun, if you've got, I mean, the laws in the UK are getting more and more restrictive. But the Taser sat. It would be easier on paper to sell a ballistic missile than it would to sell a Taser, and they really did go. Exactly as Rick was saying.
Dealer.
Yeah.
And so that's what these guys were up against. Now, actually, one thing that's interesting I've learned in my career, business judgment would say, well, you'd go find somebody in the UK that's got a lot of political pull, some big arms dealer or some big police equipment dealer.
No, we go to a shoe repair shop.
Yeah. But you know what? Our number one distributor in the US early on was a dog trainer out of Florida named Russ Stender. And what these guys had in common was passion. And they didn't accept no. Like you'd go to some big company, some big defense contract like BAE Systems, no offense to BAE, like they wouldn't take on the headaches to try to do something like this. But Peter Boatman and Kevin Coles, they stood up and they said, look, we're going to give it a try. And to be honest, I was focused on other markets. I remembered my time in a quiet room with British Customs crushing a plastic taser. I was like, man, this is going to be an uphill battle. And they just went after it. It makes too much sense. How long did it take you to get the first approval?
It's well, what happened was that Peter said to me when you very kindly said, would you like to be the distributor? And I was very, very excited at the prospect. He said, hang on a minute, Kev, it's not as easy as that. You've got to become a firearms dealer. You've got to get Section 5 authority. You've got to have an armoury. You've got to have this. You've got to have that.
An armoury is like a big weapon vault.
Yeah,
right?
it is, and it's with high security. And I'd spent £70,000 25 years ago before I sold a Taser.
Wow.
You know, so it was a big commitment.
Yeah.
And Peter, he did a good job of convincing me how good it was, didn't he?
Yeah.
You know, but I've been over. In truth, I've been over to Scottsdale, and I'd been to the conferences and stuff. And every time I saw it, I got more enthusiastic and believed it more.
But it took years. Describe this vault that you had to create before you could even bring test samples over.
Yeah. The first one, it's because I had the one with the smoke cloak and everything, which was a bigger facility. But when we sort of got a bit of traction.
What's a smoke cloak?
A smoke cloak is a very clever bit of kit that it goes off on normally on a PIR or if you break a window or something. But it's the rock bands used to have the smoke and stuff like that. It has an incursion and boof, it fills the room with an impenetrable fog. They do it in jewellery shops. They'll use it in shops, but ours was in a warehouse facility.
Yeah. So you can't see it, blinds you.
It completely you can't see your hand in front. And we also had a strobe light, a white noise bar and a strobe light.
To blind you as well.
And you could put your hand in front of you because and it'd pulse through your hand. Very effective, and it's so that was better than a lot of police forces, I think.
Sure.
The security there, but the first one with the bars and the steel door and everything. Most people are not old enough to remember the Man from U.N.C.L.E. I'm sure you're not, but it's really good for my generation. Really interesting that the CIA was hidden behind a dry cleaning business. So they'd have the business and they'd have it there, and they'd go behind the counter and open it, and then all the electronics and all the agents were working behind the scenes. With me, I was a shoe repairer and cutting keys in the front. And then if I had police officers and stuff come, I used to guide them towards a staircase. We'd go up a flight of stairs. Then we had a steel door. Then we had barred doors and we had roofs. And we were up the third story. And the council very kindly, it wasn't anything to do with us, but they put a CCTV camera right outside our barred office window. So if they'd turned the camera round, they'd have seen all these bars on the window, and they'd have probably seen police officers
coming
and various visitors coming.
That is so cool, like the secret lab.
It was.
Kevin's secret lab.
It was. I used to just.
Did you ever go? Did you ever go to the?
I don't think I went to that one.
No. To be honest, Rick, I'd have been a little bit apprehensive showing you that setup. I mean, the police and they loved it, and they used to use me for if they'd got a practice guarding, the armed officers had got to guard a dignitary, they would use my premises and they would bring him down. They would come down and they'd put firearms officers in the yards and up the road, and they'd do a mock-up, and they'd use my premises to bring a dignitary, and they'd have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and then they'd clear off, and then again they'd thank me and they're off. So it's just an amusing setup. But I had a company called Armour Fabrications. They used to make big steel doors for big armours, and I'd had a steel door halfway upstairs because it's 3 stores. And then I remember when we had 4,000 cartridges delivered, and we had them outside, and we had to carry them all up these flights of stairs up to the top. Elaine helped me carry them. She helped me carry them up the stairs in these boxes in the days when I could pick a box. Now I wouldn't be able to pick them up if you were boxing them in tens, but since a few medical things. But it was but it was interesting times, and there was several interlocking rooms, and they'd all got steel doors.
Do you have any videos of this? Or
no
pictures.
I don't know where the video cameras were about then.
Yeah.
We're about then. Certainly, we hadn't got. We probably had got one, but it was probably a VHS and stuff. But I'm sure Peter would have been saying it, because it was for Peter. He was very keen on top security.
We're back in, call it 2000.
Yep.
And Kevin's lab is set up in the secret vault behind the shoe repair shop.
Yeah.
And you're tens of thousands of pounds into this for our American viewers. That's like,
yeah.
Add another 50%, put it in dollars.
Well, you said 70,000 pounds at one point.
That's like $100,000.
Yeah, it was 70,000, and this was 25 years ago. But I was fortunate. I'd been relatively successful with my brother and stuff. We'd got a successful business. You could see where it wasn't and I'd got children. We got 3 children by then, and you could see. I got the feeling it wasn't going to put the kids through university and stuff. And so I suppose I was searching for something different. And I mean, I was so excited with the prospect of Taser when Peter hit me with it. I mean, I must have drove my poor old Elaine mad. Although I did manage to shoot Elaine. With the X26.
In the UK, or did you do that?
No, that was legitimate in the UK. What happened was...
Wow, I thought you guys weren't allowed to do that here.
Well, I wasn't a police officer, was I?
Okay.
So, I was just a distributor. So it was... what happened was, when we used to do exhibitions and stuff, when we were allowed to, although they got to be behind closed doors and police only, Elaine and Stephanie, Peter's wife, they got fed up with being asked how it felt, because Peter, I'd shot Peter, Peter shot me, he'd tested drive stuns and stuff, so we'd been hit quite a lot of times with it and stuff, and still appreciate it and loved it. And they asked if they could experience it. You have actually got, somewhere there'll be the video somewhere, where I shot Elaine, Pete shot Steph first for 5 seconds, and then I shot Elaine for 5 seconds.
Your wife,
to this day, I have never been able to get Brenda to take a hit. Maybe I should just sneak up on her.
I'm going to advise you not to do that.
Well, I don't think so. I'm not so sure that Elaine would want it again, but
one time is enough.
But she behaved perfectly. She locked up and never made a sound. Well, Steph was a bit more animated, so you got the two different effects. So it was great for showing. Well, somebody might feel like this, somebody might feel like that, and that come across. And we had it on a loop on a TV, and you heard the taser go off, and then you heard some noise, and then not some noise, and that was on a loop. So
well, you know what all the masters
playing all the while. Yeah.
You know what the master instructors say, that all the guys scream really loudly, and the women hold it in. They're the ones who don't scream.
Well, I must be in touch with my feminine side, because I've never made a noise since I've been tased.
Oh, really? I scream like a baby.
No, you've got the videos. Even with the ex-rep, when I came over and you wired me in and you gave me 30 seconds on the front and 30 seconds on the back. They had a button on the floor, and you're supposed to knock the button to stop the pain. There was no way I couldn't have knocked the button if I'd have wanted to, but I did. But the funny thing
might have been designed that way.
But I was just how that happened. I was just walking around the factory with Andy Gray, as it matters. He was over looking at it from the police perspective in the Home Office, and somebody, probably Steve Tuttle, I suspect. do you want to get hit with the X-Rep? And I'd seen the video of Hans being shot with the X-Rep, and I thought...
The X-Rep was our 12-gauge wireless shotgun round that had taser conductor electrical weapon inside it.
And I thought, and he said, oh, no, we're going to wire you up, it'll be fine. So I went in and I got electrodes put either side of my heart. And anyway, I did as I was told. They clamped me up, they gave me 30 seconds. And it was pretty effective, I have to say. Again, I didn't squeal, but I don't think I could have found the energy to squeal. And then they said, right, well, let's do the back now. So I'd had the front, and then I had the back for 30 seconds. Same response, and then I went on my way.
You could have said...
You have got that video, I'm sure.
You could have said no.
Well, no, I don't think I'd ever refused. But I'll tell you what, the funny thing, when you touched on the 34,000... part of what we used to do as a presentation...
Which is the old taser weapon from the 90s.
I used to put the 34,000 on my bicep and choke them and activate it and choke them. Couldn't do that with an M26.
Yeah.
Because you could show that one was basically...
Right.
It was just like a stun gun and the other was a mobilisation device.
So it sounds like you didn't believe there was going to be a market here. You were focused elsewhere.
I'd have bought any amount if they'd allowed me.
This is the guy who believed there was a market here in the UK.
All right, so how long did it take from our first meeting and you putting in this secret weapon storage facility and working the British police? I remember they spent tens of millions of British pounds, which is like tens of millions of US dollars studying the electrical effects and the medical safety and all that. How long did that process take before you got approved?
Well, when they started on the study program, obviously they gave me it is a gift. It is a gift. You don't buy it. You have to have a special branch investigation and you have to pass, the credentials. They had to come and inspect and make sure. That's why I'd gone overboard with my steel doors and my bars and everything, because I didn't want them to say, this isn't adequate. So I did go overboard with the security because I wanted to get the authority. But then I had an authority for 12 months. They bought a few units and that 12-month authority then ran out. So they gave me an extension for a month. And I thought, so in real life, I only had 2 weeks in every month when I could sell it, because if I got it, it took a week to get it here from the States, although we used to get it picked up and then brought over.
But this is after it was approved, right?
No, well, it was approved. I was approved for sale to the Home Office so they could test it.
How long did it take you to get approved?
Well, it was probably 12 months before because then they did a handling trials, didn't they? They put it in with firearms.
I was like 4 years from 2000 to 2004.
It was over 2 years in the thing, and then it was very limited. The Metropolitan Police and Thames Valley Police, West Yorkshire Police, just to name but a few, they had, because they wanted different types of police forces to test it.
So that was part of the overall approval process.
It was, but
they would buy small amounts for
it was, and it was only with firearms. So in essence, you could argue that was with the wrong people, because the tasers, instead of hands-on stuff, and the firearm is almost as a last resort.
It was only with the firearms officer.
It was only for the...
So here in the UK, for those that don't know, most officers, unlike the US, they're unarmed.
Yep.
Except they do have highly trained and specialized firearm officers, which you're describing. And those are the ones at the time that could carry taser devices.
Now, my recollection is this was pretty clever. The way that they got some of the critics, I think even Amnesty International, to change their opinion, or at least to come along, was... Initially in the UK, they said, we will only authorize the taser weapons to be used in the same situation where lethal force is authorized.
Yep.
And then it was, look, these are only situations where they're already authorized to use a gun. Mm-hmm. Only in those situations could they use the Taser M26. And like the logic is just too strong there. In fact, now we did have that come in the United States at different points, and people have pointed out, well, when you do that,
right,
like typically the officer's going to go for his gun first. And that sentence has changed. Now it's not at lethal force. You have gone way downstream in the UK.
We just finally got it changed in New Jersey. For the longest time, it was a policy in New Jersey to treat them same level. And finally got that changed.
I think it was because they knew that Peter was probably part of that at the time, presenting it in that way, such that if it's with a gun, can it do any more harm than a bullet? No, of course not. It can't. In actual fact, it might be a lot better. And obviously, it really, really is. But it was just a matter of that was the way to get it in. And now you would say that it's there's less injury potential with the taser than there is with hands-on.
In fact, yeah, we've seen that, and that's why it's moved down. Because it's
took a long while.
Much lower injury.
Took a long while.
But so the one advantage is you and I talked about in the John Oliver response. Now the UK can be a bit frustrating as an American company. You're like, we want to move fast, and there's a long testing and approval process. But the upside of this is when in the United States we had to lower the point of aim from the chest because of all the controversy about that. And remember, we sent that over to the UK, and they sent it to their experts, and they said, that's an American lawyer problem. That's not a medical problem. And so in the UK, they still aim at the center of chest.
They do, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you've said for a long time, we've had episodes with Dr. Jeff O. We've had episodes with Dr. Mark Kroll. We've rebutted the John Oliver, criticisms and talked about all the taser safety studies and et cetera. But like you've said a lot, like the UK, a very robust program to get it approved here. And I remember when we walked in the studio, I said, hey, Taser 10 finally got approved just a couple of days ago here in the UK. And you were dismayed, like,
Yeah, it was been on the verge of being approved for 6 months. But what happens in this country, unfortunately, they do release this sort of information at times when they could do with a bit of good news or a bit of stuff, and things get held back. We've suffered from that in the past. So just because everybody needs this and it's a great thing and it'll save life, they'll release it. The government will approve and release it when it suits them. And it doesn't matter what you do about it, they'll make their mind up and deal with it when it suits them. And it's the same with everything. Every decision they make, it's got.
Well, I was excited.
I've been excited for months.
No, I was excited that if they approved it, however long, 2.5 years after release, that meant that they've studied it a lot.
Ad infinitum.
Right.
Ad
so
infinitum.
it adds to the growing body of research and literature and studies at how much tasers have been studied and how safe
in their defence, you could argue that they've witnessed how well and how successful it's been elsewhere in the world, and we haven't had to go through any pain, if there has been pain, to get it approved, because they can see that. So how successful it's been elsewhere has helped them with their investigations.
I want to go back to what I think is the most interesting part people see here, and that's the human story, right? So here you are running a relatively small business.
Yep.
Your friend from the police, Peter Boatman, comes together. You guys start this crazy business to do something that's totally illegal. You're going to have to get Parliament to change the laws. You spend years after this pursuing it. We get the law changed, and then your business begins to scale. I remember you guys went from this tiny little shop to you had this bigger facility.
Yeah, we did. With conference room, a fleet of vehicles outside, and
wow.
Yeah.
And
you guys, they couldn't ship FedEx. They can't ship to police agencies because these are Section 5 weapons. You guys had to hand deliver every device.
We did. In my day, every taser and every cartridge was hand delivered by myself, my wife, Elaine was with me, Peter, Stephanie. We went to every police headquarters in Britain and we hand delivered everything. But what was the good thing about that was because we spoke to the operators and the armourers and the people who were using the kit, and we were getting all the feedback and working out what would be good for the future with it to keep these guys happy and satisfied. We instigated some armourers courses like which is weapons maintenance stuff, because we thought because they never spoke to each other. So we got them together on our armourers courses and they'd be talking about stuff and we'd listen, and if we thought we could do stuff to help them in the future, we would. But you get really good information, and talking to each other, they don't replicate mistakes. And if we can help them make sure that everything goes well, we did. And we used to stop in some nice hotels. We stopped, when we first started going around the country, we stopped in some not very nice hotels. And as it scaled and we got more successful, we stopped in some nice hotels. And it was great. It was the most wonderful period in my life, and I loved every minute up until where we're getting to now.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to set this as well, I remember coming, I was so proud. You guys showed me your new facility with the bigger weapons involved, and you had a fleet of these black Taser vans, and they were delivering them all over the country, and the business was humming. I mean, what were your sales up to, like at the peak? Do you remember?
Well, the best was when Jackie Smith spent $10 million with us on Taser devices. That was the best. That was the
It was
best.
Jackie Smith.
She was the Labour Home Secretary, and I think she'd got a Phyllis Guy. I don't know, but I don't know whether her father was a police officer or something. She got a bit of history because over the years you get different Home Secretaries, and dare I say, some of them are pro-police, quite a lot are not. And unfortunately, it's a very powerful position, and some like to punish the police, and it's, as we all know, it's not an easy job. Mm-hmm. They don't get a lot of support from many places. Fortunately, they get the equipment from yourselves, and that's great. But some governments do hold them back a little, and they have a tough time of it.
So this is a fairy tale, this moment in time. These guys have changed the law. I remember really quickly, I think every police department, every constabulary in the UK had taser weapons. The business was growing. You guys were, as I looked at it, it looked from the outside like you put all of your life savings into this business.
Oh yeah, I did. But I felt I couldn't help but feel that way. I mean, unfortunately, Elaine, my wife, she supported me. I mean, she probably thought I was nuts when I'm getting shot and stuff like that with the taser weapon. But I suppose I'm a bit stupid, and I like to remind her how good it was. And when you change devices and you go from X2 to it was they feel different and stuff. I think Steve Tuttle has probably treated me to the X2. You had a conference in Scottsdale. They asked for volunteers. I think the idea was to get you to take a hit. And
they're always trying to get me to take another hit. I'm up to 8.
They said, but at that time, they said, look, we need to get, I think, 5 or 6 volunteers to get Rick to take a hit. And out of 500 people, they didn't get enough volunteers. I was one. There were younger people than me from the UK. There was lots of people there. They didn't get enough volunteers. But I took my hit. And then when I went on stage, I think Steve Tuttle said, "Oh, not you again," and he did. And I fell over like I'm supposed to. And then he did an interview while I was laying on the floor.
That sounds like Steve.
But it does what it says on the can. It does it every time. I know the probes have got to hit in the right place or whatever. But whenever I've experienced it, it's.
Do you know today, the company's roughly 5,000 people.
Yep.
And every year, at the beginning of the year, we have a big company kickoff meeting. Thousands from around the world, employees come into Scottsdale. We're so big, we have to do it at a convention center now. We can't even do it in a small hotel or hotel room. And, we talked about this before. Reuters, there's a hit piece and say we make people get tased, take a hit from a taser device. But it only, we do offer the voluntary exposures at these conferences. Yeah. The line today, like last January, was around the room, out the door, around the corner of employees lining up. You didn't have to twist their arm because they work for the company, they believe in the product, they believe in the mission. They just, especially international employees, they're lining up to get tased. And to this day, Steve Tuttle is still on stage.
Yeah.
He's the guy up there, might not be using the taser device on them. He's up there talking to them and taking pictures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, you never get anybody more excitable and encouraging than Steve. Well, yeah, he could talk anybody into anything, couldn't he?
So from the year 2000, we're totally illegal. You guys stepped up, invest in the business, putting everything at risk. We get the government approvals. We're scaling that 2004 to 2010-ish time rate. It's just fantastic. Yep. We're all growing together. And then came the XREP. So the XREP was actually the original concept I had for the business. If you go back and look at my business plan from 1993, we had a theory that if you lowered the operating voltage and held the current constant, you could drastically reduce the size of the power supply and actually fit the taser circuit, the full electrical circuit, into a shotgun shell. And we did the testing, and it turns out it worked. And so we launched a product called the XREP, the Extended Range Electrical Projectile, which was a self-contained connected electrical weapon in a shotgun shell.
No wires are attached when you fire.
Nope, you fire it out and it would hit. Now, the one challenge we had was getting a good spread. So it would hit, you'd get the 2 electrodes close together, the body of the XREP would fall away, and then it had these cactus-like barbs. They were actually designed after the Arizona jumping cactus. These barbs would open up, and we would hope that it would swing down and puncture through the clothing to give us that spread for the second connection. By the way, if that didn't work, we did have a sneaky barb on the back of the front. So if you tried to grab it and remove it, that would give us your hand, and now we'd have a good connection. It was
Complicated?
It was a complex. It was the greatest scientific breakthrough I've seen in my
I thought
career.
it was fantastic. I mean, as I say, you wired me into it, so I knew electrically it was really, really effective. And then, I was so keen on it. I mean, I made a mobile range so that they could shoot it at longer range. I put a mesh material and I had a frame so they could fire the projectile, because we were allowed to get it into the country to look at. That is a classic example of the Home Office not being interested, and it didn't. We had it for a long, long time, and I don't think they really looked at it. Elsewhere in the world, it was saving lives. Wonderful piece of kit. As I say, electrically, I'd felt it. I'd got I'd been over to your part of the world. I'd been over to Mossberg's with Peter. We went up to Mossberg's and had a look at the shotguns, which was the platform for it, and we'd seen it, and it was it should have been a roaring success, but it needed to be going through that 2-year process, and we'd had it quite a long time. Some of the guys from Northumbria Police, which I know you get where you get into with the rail moat, a couple of officers from Northumbria Police had been over to America on a course, and they'd used and experienced the X-Rep, and they knew it was a good piece of kit. Then, of course, we.
All right, so let me set this up. So I think we're 2 years into this.
Yep, definitely 2 years. At least 2 years.
You had the special permits, the Section 5 permits, but only authorized to ship it to the Home Office and specifically approved agencies
for tests. Yeah, but it was for tests, but. It was sitting there. We were showing it to police forces and stuff, and honestly, they could see the potential. But scientifically, I don't believe it was. They may be able to prove me wrong. I just don't think they were looking at it.
It was still M26s in the UK, or had you moved?
No, it would have been X26 by then.
Up to X26
the smaller X26s.
Yeah.
Now, this is our long-range weapon, and they're sitting on it. And then this incident happens. There's a guy on the loose. His name is Raoul Moat. Now, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but my recollection was this. I think he was like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, he was. I think he was on steroids, and that does do something. Apart from it builds muscle and everything. I'm sure it must affect people's brain, because the guy proved to be. He was, apart from being a nasty bit of work in every way imaginable, the steroids would have made him even worse. And he'd been incarcerated, but then he was let out. Whether he'd got access to something, some drugs, who knows? I don't know. I made a point of not watching the TV programs and everything, although I did have representation at the Raoul Moat inquest.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back. So Raoul Moat is an enraged individual. I think it's fair to call him a serial killer because he had killed multiple people.
Well, he'd certainly killed. He shot his ex-girlfriend with the intention of killing her. She survived. He shot her then boyfriend and killed him. And he also shot through the windscreen of a car and blinded a police officer. So he had the intention, but when you say he got the intention of killing as many police officers as he could, and that's known that was part of his thing. He was going to come out. When he'd gone on the rampage, that was his intention, which was to take as many police officers with him as he could.
And so he was using a sawed-off shotgun.
Yes.
Had killed one or two people.
Killed one.
Killed one, and then seriously,
but the intention of doing others.
And so he was, there was a big manhunt going on. And then apparently he was pinned down in a field somewhere in the north of England. And my recollection was that police department called Peter in the middle of the night.
They were still looking for him in the woods, because it's quite a rustic area. You know, there's trees and it's very impenetrable sort of area. He was well known. He knew the area well. They thought the two officers who'd been to Scottsdale and seen the X-Rep thought it might be useful, because they considered they'd like to try and capture him alive. Because I think they probably knew that it would be a life or death thing because of the nature of the man and the fact of the weaponry that he'd got. So, but these officers went to. I just wish they hadn't have done that now because obviously we'd still have Peter and we'd, I'd have been retired by now because my tenure...
But they called Peter because they wanted to take him alive.
They called Peter?
Yeah, because they wanted access to the ex-rep.
And my understanding, it was something like midnight, 2 in the morning.
It was. I think he took the call late at night. He went round to the armory on his own and he took, I think it was 6 pump-action shotguns and some rounds. Didn't sell them, didn't do anything. He took them. He had a call for help. And as was always the way with Peter, when he was a police officer, ironically, if it had been a police officer, he wouldn't have done anything wrong. He could have used whatever means to achieve an end, but he wouldn't have. But he took the ex-rep to Northumbria Police. They issued it.
So hold on a second, just to put this. So your business didn't make a dime from this. They didn't sell anything.
No.
These guys called Peter and said, "Hey, we've got this killer on the loose who's armed with a shotgun. We think the only shot we've got at getting this guy alive is the long-range new Taser X-Rep.
Yep.
Will you bring it up here?"
That's exactly
And so Peter gets in his car in the middle of the night, drives several hours to the north of England.
It's quite a few hundred miles from our base to there, yeah.
And that's my understanding. He actually took some of the officers, put them through a quick training.
No, that was the additional ones, but because the officers who'd been over to America were defensive tactics instructor, they were non-firearms officers, although they were well familiar with other things, because when they do the defensive, they basically get everything thrown at them. But they decided that they weren't to be involved in any training of anybody. So he showed various, because there was police officers from all around the country, specialists, sort of flown in. They weren't flown; they were whizzed in cars. But and then Peter gave them a quick course in the X-Rep. Those who weren't familiar, but as I say, some were. And so he went through the rudimentaries with them. I mean,
had them fire a couple training rounds. I think
I remember a Home Affairs Select Committee, which is something that came after that. When we lost their authority, I had to present to some House of the Commons MPs where I was questioned, and they said about the fact that part of the training was they'd got a large rubbish bag that was it, and they were shooting at that. And one of the MPs said, "Well, what?" I said, "Well, actually, if you think about it, the guy was down a grassy bank, and his body, that would be a good facsimile of a restricted target, and they were shooting at it, and they were happy with it because they decided to deploy with it."
Is Peter going as a police officer, or this is personal?
No, unfortunately, it was. As a distributor, as my business partner, he was going as a civilian with Section 5 authority, but not authority to allow it to be used in an operational situation.
All right, and so here's what unfolds. Peter drives up to help these police with this most dangerous situation. I mean, this is like the manhunt in Maine last year in the United States when you've got a killer on the loose who's armed and dangerous.
And quite unusual for the UK. It's not some of the stories you hear out of the US.
And Peter goes up. The police attempt to use the Taser X-Rep, and Raoul Moat shoots and kills himself with his own shotgun. It wasn't immediately clear what had happened, but the way the news stories broke the next day, every headline was, "Police use illegal super taser to kill Raoul Moat."
Yep.
And there were all sorts of allegations that the weapon was illegal, that this was not allowed in the UK, and that this super weapon had killed Raoul Moat, or that it had hit him and caused him to, kill himself with the shotgun. I remember the early headlines were all blaming, basically, Peter in particular for breaking the law by trying to help these police get these Taser X-Rep rounds.
Ironically, Rick, although this was never in the public domain, but as it's 25 years on, I feel as if I could probably share this with you. When Peter was a police officer and he had his silver Taser that you'd made specifically for him, I know it's only a paint job, but it was a Taser that he was doing his demonstrations with. He was a chief constable asked to borrow Peter Boatman and his M26 Taser to use. One of the motorways down the south of England was closed off. They were worried he was gonna harm his son, and so they wanted a less lethal weapon. And there is a picture of Peter Boatman holding this limited edition silver M26 Taser. He didn't deploy it, but he was actually sent out to an armed incident whilst he was still a police officer. So there is a precedent for somebody saying, Peter, we're in trouble, can you help us with this taser?
Well,
and it was a complete sort of duplication. 15 years later, Peter, can you help us? And he went, so in his mindset, he'd done it before, so why not do it again?
Well, and this is where, no offense to the UK, but this is where a combination of the British tabloids and some toxic politics kicked in. And Raoul Moat was suddenly, and we've seen this before, sometimes if there's a controversial police incident, they make a hero out of
a killer.
And there were protests streaming up about Raoul Moat. He became, I don't want to say the names of people who've been in policing incidents, but he became like lionized by the anti-police crowd. That this poor hero was killed by this illegal super taser. Politicians came out, in cover their own ass mode. And the first thing they did is they pulled your Section 5 permit. And they effectively
shut
down the business. And I remember they came to us and they basically said, you can't, like, Peter and Kevin are blacklisted. They will never get a Section 5 again. If you want to, they know they needed us to supply taser weapons to UK policing. But basically what we were hearing was, you'll just have to do it directly as a company. And now imagine, like, these guys have put everything on the line. They built this business. It was like a fairy tale. Everything's going really well. And because Peter,
trying to help.
Like, who gets up in the middle of the night to drive up to help somebody in this most dangerous situation with the best of intentions? Now, I think the subsequent investigation showed they did attempt to use an X-Rep. They did not hit him, and Moat killed himself.
They didn't hit him at all. It's not like it didn't work. It just didn't hit him with
but ironically, when they have a coroner inquest where they take the Home Office and stuff, and it lasted for 6 weeks up in Northumbria, and the coroner basically said that we did nothing wrong. He wasn't very impressed with the Home Office, and he said we'd done nothing wrong, and it was done with the best intention, and it wasn't done for profit. But we'd lost our authority, and unfortunately, we'd also lost Peter. And so, in the midst of this, Peter was vilified in the papers. I remember you and I talking about it before the end, that he was, there was just dragging his name through the mud, that he was, basically a cop gone bad, this illegal weapons dealer who had violated the law, brought in this super taser that allowed them to, kill this poor Raoul Moat, who now there were protesters talking about, Raoul Moat is like some sort of, public hero. And in the midst of all that, like, I assume you guys were looking death in the face from a business that you'd potentially lost everything. I had the accountants in, and they said, well, the business was worth a lot of money because we were generating a lot of money. And they said, well, the business is worthless now. So that was gone. The business was gone. But Peter, I mean, this is a man who's got the Queen's Police Medal, and he'd presented to Home Secretaries. He was a strong influence on police wearing body armour. He's also looked at it's Parva, but it's pepper spray in your part of the world, expandable batons, the sort of equipment that's always designed to help officers and officer safety. And the fact that people just turned their back on him, and it killed him. I mean, to see a man who was so strong, so powerful in himself, and then him go within himself and doubt himself, and think that he'd let me down personally, which didn't matter. But what his big thing was, he felt he'd let down Taser in America. In America, he felt he'd let down these guys, and he felt he'd let the police down. And the shame killed him, really. I mean, he was found at home, dead in a garden shed. I mean, it was an open verdict, but we couldn't go into all sorts of details. We don't want to prove anything. But the guy's no longer with us. I know what I saw when I went to his house, and it was the sort of thing you could imagine when somebody has shot an elephant and it falls in things. To lose such a magnificent person to something when he was only trying to help.
To do the right thing.
He was, and that is, I just think it was appalling then, and it still hurts me now. And it's ironically, it was 15 years on the 1st of October that we lost Peter.
Wow.
And it was so it's
On the
always
1st of October.
the 1st of October. It's quite pertinently close, really. But it's and he was such a nice guy. That's what I mean. Probably if you're a bad one and he's treated you to one of his pre-taser, to one of his headbutts, you probably wouldn't have liked the guy. But I found him to be a wonderful friend, and I just wish he hadn't have fell on his sword, because that's what I think it was with him. I think he thought he'd let us down, and it was an honour thing,
Right.
and I think he fell on his sword.
Well, and forgive me for sharing just one more detail, but I think it's important this was not like some freak accident. We found Peter in the shed, and the tractor was running. It
was an open verdict, which is something where unless they're there filming and watching him, you could extrapolate things. But it was Peter was a very practical man. If he wanted to get something done, it got done, and practical people do practical things.
Yeah, it's still.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. I mean, you see his family and things, and people mention him. All the police people that I met, without fail, they all would still talk about him and how he's missed and everything. But he was such a driving force, and then for it all to be gone, and I just think it achieved so much, and then trying to do the right thing had such a bad consequence.
Well, this is just such a great example of the toxic things that happen in the media, where your business was destroyed, government officials took it away. I think any reasonable person looking at this would have seen that, he was giving of himself to heroically try to help, and
Stop
he was
a killer.
and he was destroyed for it. And it still breaks my heart to think about. Peter used to speak at our annual conferences, and people would line up. They couldn't wait for him to speak. He was literally the funniest guy. He was like a stand-up comedian.
He was. He got such a. He'd captivate an audience, wouldn't he? And he was such a practical joker. I mean, some of the things he got up to. But he was just to people who were, in inverted commas, good, decent people. He was a friend to all. People who were on the other side of things, they probably wouldn't have liked him very much, because he was, he'd got an opinion on how these people should be treated and stuff. But he always, what I saw of him, he always looked at doing the right thing, and the right thing cost him his life.
Without Peter, there would be no Taser in the UK.
No.
Again, just one of the most wonderful, the funniest guy I've ever seen speak publicly. Yeah. Just an incredible guy. And watching the circus of publicity and toxic politics, it was just horrific to watch it happen. And it's made me, anytime I see, you see some story in the news, it just makes you question, just things can get so misrepresented and twisted. In fact,
you've had more of that than anybody, though. I mean, the misrepresentation.
Not to that degree. That's
but
the
the
worst I've ever
misrepresentation that your company's had over the years. I mean, I was there when you went to the Amnesty International. I mean, I wasn't even allowed to walk across the road. And no, seriously, it was appalling how they were treated. And you're trying to do good, and again, you're treated like a pariah. And it was how you got the energy and motivation to keep trying to push at that door. I don't know.
But 15 years later, it's obviously clearly still hurts.
Well,
it does. It does, definitely.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason we shut XREP down. So we ended up, it was, so at that point, our business, we were struggling. We were trying to do body cameras and cloud software and XREP, and we had too much going on. And we had to pick what we're going to do. And one of the factors with the XREP, it turns out because it was so expensive, police were upset about the price point. We were struggling to get its reliability up. And then this just created a dark cloud over it. Whereas I
think it was probably too early for people. I mean, the actual concept, even now, it's fantastic, isn't it? But now you don't have to fire it out of a shotgun. You can chase them down with the drone, can't you?
Like we'll get questions quite a bit asking about the XREP to this day.
Yeah, one thing I would share with you is, and so we're a public company.
Yep.
And, we've got a board and the chief financial officer and all that. And one of the things that I'm personally kind of proud of was, there was basically internally it was, well, they've been shut down. We should just go direct in the UK. Like basically the government in the UK is telling us to just go direct.
Start selling.
And it wouldn't have cost us a dime. And I remember I went to my board and I said, we're buying your business. We don't have to, but we're going to. And I know it probably wasn't as much as it would have been worth without this.
No, but
But to me, it was important that we found we couldn't be part of this grand charade that was stripping you of what you had built.
And even all those, those 10 years gone, 15 years, what are we now? We're 15 years gone by. You've always supported me and looked after me. And they've asked me, and I'm still involved in that I make padded suits, I make conductive targets, I make mounts for cameras. And if people want a specific holster, I take great delight in developing and stuff even now.
Kevin the cobbler. I mean that in a good way. This guy solves so many little problems for police on how to make things just work.
He's the type of guy that you would love.
Yeah.
But we do but we're into laser cutters and doing all sorts of stuff.
Do you have a 3D printer?
I use people with 3D printers.
Don't get him going. It's a rabbit hole.
You need one, Kevin. You'd love a 3D printer.
But I loved it once when you with the Smart Probe, where you worked over the weekend and developed something over a weekend, putting all your efforts into something.
That's what he still likes to do.
Yeah, but that's I love to do. So if they want to, I've done some different sorts of magnetic camera mounts and various different stuff like that. But I just love producing something that works. And when the customer tells you that they like it and it's good, it does. But not at Rick's level, but because it's such a high-tech level. I'm at a very rudimentary level. You have the best camera in the world. I'll find a good way of putting it on your vest.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
So he got a 3D printer. He has a 3D printer now.
I'm still no Kevin Coles, though. You've solved a lot of important fit issues for our customers. So I assume you never were able to get Section 5 authorized again, right?
No, and I wouldn't have wanted to muddy the water or anything, and quite frankly, the way it went and how high tech and I would never have been able to generate enough money to put into the business that you've put into the business to develop these options for the police. I mean, they see something that's X amount and they think it's all profit. They don't realise that you've spent 1,000 times X developing that. And somewhere that money's got to come back. And how you get your money back, I don't know, because you do throw everything at giving them the best options.
I want you to know I was negotiating against my own team, which is kind of weird. We're not going to grind these guys down. We've got to pay them something that's fair. And I'm proud that the team and the board went along with me on this, where it was, they said it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If it was pure, ruthless dollar and cents business, and I guess a lot of public companies wouldn't have done it because... Again, it's kind of weird to pay for something you don't have to pay for.
Well, no, but that was
the right thing to do.
The government telling you to do this, essentially.
No, but it was a real act of kindness, because I know you came over personally from America to see Stephanie as well, Pete's widow, and Elaine. He flew out specifically to see us and come down. We came down to London. We went out for a meal, and. Absolute gent, and you were extremely kind to us. And I don't think I ever thanked you properly for that, because he was a very, very kind thing to do, and you didn't need to do it. Well, so thank you very much for that.
Everything you've done for me and for the company, and it's been great continuing the relationship where even though you couldn't work on Taser stuff anymore, like you got in with body cameras, and you continued to be such a creator. I did
get to do certain stuff because they wanted the targets. They wanted to go. I wanted to do I'm not going to bore you with, although you probably know all the history, but 25 years ago, we had the tinfoil target that you would shoot at. And Peter was still a police officer. And I said, why don't we have a moving target? Why don't I make myself a rubber suit and run about and you shoot me with a taser? He said, because the guys will love that if they've got a moving target. So I made myself, it was microcellular rubber with brushed nylon. I put Velcro, and I had like a coal scuttle on my head with a visor. And the idea was very, very simple in them days. The M26, it had a cartridge in the handle and the cartridge. So you would shoot at the suit, fine, stopped it a treat, and then it was less likely to work in the back. So I got in touch with the guys in Scottsdale. I said, look, can you hotwire the cartridges so I don't get the electricity? And they said, well, we can't really do that. He said, but what we can do, the film Hannibal had been made with Hannibal Lecter, big film 25 years ago. The stunt guys didn't want the electricity, so you'd put fishing line in instead of insulated wire. So I said, great. And then they said, well, you'll have to buy 1,000, and I think it would be £16,500 was my recollection that I paid for these cards. I ordered that. And Peter, still being the police officer, he advised me. I told him what I was going to do with these cartridges. He said, tell them to make them in blue because otherwise they'll take them out on the street. So I got these ordered. Pete said, great, Northamptonshire Police, first course. He said, well, let them have a go. 12 officers, shoot you in your suit, shoot you in the front, shoot you in the back with your new cartridges, be fine. Unfortunately, you got flow lines in the plastic. And because you like everything to be A1 quality, I got the phone call, we can't send you the blue cartridges. You'll have to wait. So I picked up the phone, Pete, I've got a problem. Can we delay? He said, no. He said, the course is booked. The guys, he said, they can't just take their holidays or anything like that. He said, they're on a course. You'll have to do it with live cartridges. So I thought, it'll probably be all right. So anyway, they all lined up. They shot me in the front, changed the cartridge and shot me in the back. Unfortunately, my rubber suit had made me rather hot and I'd got a little bit sweaty, and it was brushed nylon, and I hadn't worked out that brushed nylon is not too good with static electricity and so forth. So 8 out of the 12 guys lit me up because it was tight across my back. So I took 8 hits in about 15, 20 minutes. And I can still hear them. I could hear Peter shouting, switch it off, switch it off, switch it off, because they were new to the weapon and everybody is a little bit afraid when they see the spark. Mm-hmm. It's odd. They used to fire in weapons and this and that, but they all seem, because you must have seen on courses when they spark it and they catch it and stuff. Well, I got 8 hits in about 20 minutes. And that was, interesting.
Well, I had totally forgotten about that. That police worldwide now use the blue fishing line cartridges.
They did.
I had forgotten that was a Kevin Coles invention.
It was exactly that. And then many years later, we get into the smart probe. And of course, it was a number 8 fish hook on the original training cartridge. And the smart probe is fantastic, but it's not too good for a training cartridge because it doesn't matter how good your suit is, because it's designed to cut through thick clothing, it negates how it's going to operate. So long story short, they stopped. They didn't want to use the smart probe training cartridge. So I thought, well, I've seen some really aggressive hook material that's like a Velcro type thing, but there's other types of materials about. This was like a mushroom type, and I think this came from Germany in the first instance. But I got a masonry now made like a little daisy on it, and I got some tweedy material, and I threw it at it, and it stuck to it. So then I got on an aeroplane. I came over to see you guys, and they tried it, and they developed the smart probe out of it. And I'm actually on the patent, would you believe? I've got to mention I am on the patent.
Oh, and that's on the Holt probe.
That's on the Holt probe,
the new probe that has Velcro.
They actually put me on. So although it was my concept for the original blue cartridge, but now I am actually officially on
So two inventions you didn't realize came from Kevin then.
Yeah, well, I don't, you don't want to listen to
I'm also adding up how many times you've been hit. You're up in Steve Tuttle territory at this point.
Possibly, I
mean, we just get 8 or 9. You're just kind of...
but it's been a long time now since Steve Tuttle was the last one to give. And of course, I do miss it. I'd have liked to have tried the T7. I'd like to have tried the T10, but health reasons, you wouldn't. You'd be worried. You'd be
Kevin,
worried to
death. It all
death.
works the same.
Yeah, it all feels the same.
Yeah.
So I have to say, there are hundreds of thousands of cops worldwide that are thanking you right now because no matter how good we made those suits, sometimes the dart tip would still go through. So I can't tell how many times it looked like somebody, after a day of training, looked like they'd been hit by a swarm of bees.
It's only got to hit the same place twice, hasn't it? It's going to get through. So that's why. So it took a long while to get round to it, but but I still work. I do work on we do a Holt suit for the UK. Last week, actually, I sent one out to Germany because they want to use it they want to use it in Germany, I think. But but now for the T10, I'm looking at undergarments that work in conjunction with it, like cycling shorts at top, also made with the spacer material, because I know they're going to be, it's not so much them, but they go home and their wife says, "What's this red mark? What's that? What's that?" Because it's covering the distance. It's got a velocity. So, but I'm sure we'll be able to protect against it.
So as we get ready to wrap up, I mean, your contributions have been just incredible, from legalizing in the UK to rethinking training.
I promise you, I loved every minute. I'd have paid for it. I paid to do it.
What was the original name of the company?
Protect Systems.
Protect Systems. Well, you're not really supposed to toast with water, but as we wrap up, to Peter Boatman,
cheers. You're
chemicals and Protect
Very
Systems.
good health. Cheers, Mike.
Cheers.
Yeah. What an amazing experience it's been being here with you.
I think we'll wrap up episode 21 of the Boldly Go podcast, coming to you from London. So thank you
And thank you, Kevin. This was a story that the world needed to hear.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, but thank you for giving us the Taser weapon. What a wonderful piece of kit. What a wonderful ride. And it's great to see where you've got to now. I can't see where the next step could be. I mean, let's hope this lasts a lot longer and a lot more people get it.
Just wish Peter could be here celebrating with us.
Oh, he'd be over the moon. He'd be over the moon.
Let's boldly go.